All right, welcome to the next video. This one's on Relevant on TryHackMe. This room was created by the mayor. He's a newer up-and-coming InfoSec star, kind of newer to the industry, but really has really great content, really really deep understanding of the material and how to kind of present that, and also make sure that you know um, it's digestible and understandable by loads of people. So he created this room, a really cool room. Definitely highlights like more of a real Windows environment pen test. It's one system, not a network, but it's up to date. It's a 2016 box instead of an older box, and just looks at a misconfiguration and from that misconfiguration, using that to kind of get more privileges and work through that. Um, so let's look at the box. Let's look at the room here. So the way that he structured off the room, which is pretty interesting, is he actually it doesn't require it, or there's no way for them to check, but they want you to kind of write a report, which in one of my videos before we covered about report writing and how to provide a report that has impact and how to make sure that your customers are getting the most value out of that. And so, this is a good example of doing a room and then writing up a report, and then if you're going to maybe an interview for a pen test job, that's an example of work that you can present and say, hey, here's one that I did on this room. Here's how I wrote this report, and you could take a little bit of time and make this as best as possible and look the greatest. So it's not a bad room to kind of do that, and have that example of work to show off, especially as you're trying to get your foot in the door there. So this is a challenge room. All it's looking for is that user and root text. I already have the box spun up, so we'll go ahead and start our normal processes. So we'll copy the IP address, and we'll go ahead and put that into a targets.txt file. Okay. So if we cat that targets.txt, we should have that. So now we can use that text file for all of our scanning, or call on that to kind of be our IP address without having to remember it. All right, so let's go ahead and get our nmaps going. So we're going to do input list. We're going to put the targets file there, and then we want to do service versions, advanced OS detection. We'll go ahead and invoke the scripting. We'll do some of the defaults, version, phone. We kind of know that this is a Windows box, so we could do a little bit of that LDAP all, SMB all, HTTP all. Again, if we didn't know, then we could add those later. Since we're adding all these scripts, we want to make sure we put in some kind of timeout. And then output all formats and call this detailed. So this is not all ports, but this will be good. Okay, and then we're just going to copy this and slim that down for our next scan. So got to do sudo. There we go. So we'll leave the service version advanced OS detection, but we'll take out the scripting. So real quick, we got the hits back on some of the standard Windows port 139, 445, 135, 3389. So we definitely have our RPC and SMB services open. We got RDP, remote desktop, and a web service running on this. So we're waiting on the box. We could go ahead and look at the web service. All right, so it looks like your standard IIS page. Again, if I was to do the pen test report, I'd write this up as a default page being there. Again, this kind of gives you or the attacker information on what the actual service is. You'd want some custom 404 page or custom page that basically doesn't do that. Also, one of the things that we're not seeing here when we're requesting this page is headers. So if we wanted to see that, let me do that. So we can see another things too. The headers coming back here, server Microsoft IIS 10. So we do want to configure that banner, and also X powered by ASP.NET. So again, these give an attacker more information, and you can change the configuration settings to not provide that. So that would help out to kind of lower that. All right, so let's go back to our scans, and we are finished with this one. So this is again just the initial scan with some service versioning. So 80, like I said, Windows RPC, NetBIOS SSN. Then the Microsoft SMB service and terminal. There's the box relevant. And nothing else. Let's see if it gives us any more. So SMB security mode account used was guest. So there is a guest account. Message signing is disabled. So in a network environment, again, I would do relay attacks to this box to kind of get access to this via some kind of network attack, like using responder or LLMNR. Without the message signing, then that would give me the ability if some network administrator messed up or there was some kind of scanning service that wasn't set up correctly, I could relay to this box and gain access that way. So that's what I would definitely do and definitely target in an actual network environment. And so that would also be a finding, right? Is that this SMB security mode allows guest. That's one finding. Another finding would be message signing is disabled um, and not required. So there's a couple more findings right there. Let's go ahead and get all port scanning just to make sure. Okay. All right, so we got the basic generic port 80 page, and there was nothing there. So our next step then would be to kind of get some of the longer scanning going. So we'll go do Go Buster. And we'll reuse this command, but we'll clean this up. So we're going to do I always like to put underscore in that what port it is in case there's multiple web ports. It allows you the ability to kind of remember where you're at. All right, so we're going to do some of that bash inclusion here. So I'm basically having my terminal first execute cat targets, which is that 10 address, and then replace that in that command line here. So what we're doing is we're calling GoBuster as a function of dir. You specify the URL, and so that we're specifying http:// whatever's inside the targets file. Then you specify the word list, so that's the -w equals. We're using the directory of the list 2.3 medium.txt, and then we're going to output that into a file in this directory. So you can see here it did see that it was 10 to 235.43. So again, gives you the ability to kind of not have to remember that and keep in scope. Now, if you had multiple targets in that targets file, that's not going to work. You'd have to, write some kind of bash loop or something to kind of go through each one and do that. And I've done that in bigger pen tests or things like that. All right, so let's see what more of the details type scans come back with. Doesn't look like any additional information. Again, we did see the headers here. We're not seeing too much more details. All right. So the next thing then is to move down in our port. So the next port that we saw would have been the SMB port that we can kind of do something with. So we'll do SMB map. Cat targets. There we go. So you have to specify a user as anonymous to kind of get this tool to work. If you don't specify on some of the systems, it's not going to work or acts like it's not going to work. So I've had to specify that specifically to get that to work. Is saying port 445 is not open, which we know is not true. So we'll try this again. So now it's saying authentication error. We'll try guest. All right. I'll try putting in just the IP. SMB map definitely has become a little bit more finicky about running or having issues. I noticed. See. All right, so here's another finding, right? Is that we have open shares to guest, our unauthenticated users. So this share here, NT work service, is read and write by guest. So that allows a person, anyone on the network, to access that share. And so what we're going to do is we're going to see what's on that share here. And NT work service. So we're just going to push enter there. And it had a bad network name, so must have not had something correct. Oh, NT4. Misspelled it. Okay, so once you get this, you're basically in an SMB command prompt. So again, you're connected to the server. You have a list of commands that you can do. Here's, if you type help, here's all the different commands. So this is like a sudo DOS type terminal. You can't run commands or anything like that. But you can upload and download stuff. So, for us, mostly what we're going to do is an ls. We do see a passwords. So we can do a get. And so that downloads it. We could try to CD and see if we can break out of that, but it doesn't look like that. So that's the only thing available to this user. And so we're kind of stuck in that situation here. So we can exit this. And let's go ahead and make a directory called loot and move those passwords.txt into loot. So we'll look in loot and then we'll cat the passwords. So user passwords encoded. So these look again similar to base64. The way you know that is with strings that usually end in equals or equals. Those are good indications that it's base64. And then to decode that is you copy it, you then echo and pipe that into base64 and do -d. So then that's a password for that user. And now we need to check the other one and see what that is. Okay, so it looks like we got two encoded passwords. So let's put those into a text file and make sure we have those for later. We'll use this terminal down here since we have this one open. We can go ahead and put this in loot also. All right, and we'll put here, we'll copy and paste. Usually you want to put like a colon in between these. That's kind of more the indicator of username and password, and most tools recognize that. Another thing you could do is put these in two separate text files, like one's users and one's passwords, because maybe Bill's password is what Bob's password is, and maybe vice versa. But right now, currently, we just want to record these so we don't lose these. What we can try to do is see if these are valid users. Okay. And let's go ahead and look at the, no, we already looked at the scan, so we're good there. Okay, clear and clear. Got some 400s, so nothing major there. So we're going to try to take these username and passwords now and see if those work. And so what we can do is SMB client. We'll list out the server. Okay. And then what we'll want to specify is the user. We'll try Bob. And then we can try his password. What we're seeing here is if maybe Bob gives us access, if this is valid. Bob's password again contains special characters, so we could try to not do it, and then it should ask us. I am having problems because I'm trying to do that, so I'm just have to specify the target. So 10.10.2.35.43. It's not liking something. Let's see here. We could try mounting the drive like we did before. The only thing with that is that we know that you can mount it via guest, so not installing the most confidence there. We could try a different method here in a second too, but we'll give this a shot first. So yeah, see, like it just let me do Bob there without, and it didn't really require me to do anything else. So, all right, let's do psexec and try this. So with psexec on the newer versions of Kali, it's under Impacket, and then Impacket now has a lot of its tools built into Kali. Before it used to have to, download the repository and then have access to those tools via that method. So this kind of gives you the ability to use that still, but kind of keeps it a little bit separated. So in this case, what we want to use is psexec. So psexec is a Microsoft sysinternals tool, and what this does is it uses a PowerShell, well, like it executes commands on the server. Yeah, here you go. Using the remcom service, and so it's mimicking that same thing that sysinternals tool does by executing it that service through the SMB. So we specify SMB exec, then we specify we'll try Bob first, and then his password. I should just copy this. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think that was gonna work. Let's do, just because it's got special characters, I'm going to put it within ticks and see if that works. So what happened here, right? Like what's going on? So it logged in, and again, the way PSExec works is it ends up executing like a service, um, and that service kind of ends up spawning a shell, and that shell then comes back to you. And so what we're seeing here is that we first request shares on the IP. We're then look for which one's writable, which it found a writable share, which was that NT service share. It then uploads an exe. This is basically a reverse backdoor or whatever. And then it tries to open the SVC service on there, and if it can do that, then it'll spawn that, run that service, and get us a shell basically that way. Right? So that one didn't work. Let's try Bill. So Bill's password or authentication did not work, it looks like. All right, so then we're kind of back to square one. We look at all ports and see what we got going on. The only other additional ports that we can see here that we missed before, let me cat the all ports and map, and that might make a little bit more sense. We'll cancel that because that's not going to work. So we had our standard 80, 135, 139, 445, 3389, and then we had a 49663. And that looks like it's an additional service, and then a couple additional Windows RPC services. These are usually standard. So this service here, let's see if that comes out to be anything. All right, so it looks the same. So on our Go Buster here, we'll do the similar thing, but we'll put that additional port now. So when you're specifying additional port, you for HTTP services, you can just put that there if you don't mess it up like I did apparently. 49663. And so that's what it's doing now. It's just doing it on that specific port. So we're waiting for scans to kind of go back. You know, the only access that we've gotten so far is just that SMB service. Um, so this kind of puts you in a predicament of, you know, what's this SMB service do? Is this something I can, you know, do anything with? Um, yeah, where does it lead? That type of stuff. So let's look at what we had with that, and then see if we can get anywhere, or if we have, you know, any access to anything. So again, we have LS. If we look at LS, we have passwords, right? And so we can start playing with this and seeing, is maybe this directory. Oh, I totally killed that by accident. Is this directory available on this server? So let's open up two tabs. Let's have, uh, let's do this first. Paste that there. We'll copy this and we'll take out the port. Okay, so we got blank directory. So not a 404 or anything like that. Not a directory listing. So that's something. We're not seeing any, you know, hidden data or anything like that. So that's kind of good. Good, maybe possible indication of something. Passwords.txt. So let's see if we can get that. Oh, okay. So we do get it there. And we do not get it on the second one. So it looks like this might be mapped to what we're seeing. So that would be a finding, is having a publicly accessible directory mapped to your web server. Because that can, you know, of course, have issues like we're about to see here. So we'll let these keep scanning and see what comes out of it. But we kind of starting to have an idea of what we might want to do here. Let's create a file. We're in the loot directory. So we're gonna go in cd, whoops, relevant, and then loot. Okay. Let's upload passwords dot decoded and see if that goes in there. Okay, so we uploaded passwords underscore decoded. Yeah, we'll just try this on both. All right, that definitely looks like that's it then. All right, so we're gonna nix port 80. We're not getting anything out port 80, so it's port 49663. That basically, the SMB service is tied directly to this IIS service. So whatever we upload here, we can basically execute on the server. And if you remember earlier when we were looking at the server, when we curled it, it gave us two indications of what's running underneath it. Let's curl it one more time and we'll look at this. And we're going to do a -v, and that's going to give us the headers. So the server again is responding back that it's Microsoft IIS 10 and it's powered by ASP.NET. So we now have the ability to run potential code on the server. We can upload something to it, and then it's going to interpret it, run it, and do whatever we tell it to, right? So now we have the ability to kind of put something on here and get that to run. And let's go ahead and do that. So our choice could be, you know, we could look at reverse shell or pentest or any of those type of things. So here's a web compromise. So he usually has PHP and Perl. There's a collection of web backdoors that's not there anymore. Awesome. Additionally, too, we could just use Metasploit, which is fine too. All right, so big question, right? Like how maybe you've used Metasploit, but you don't remember all of it. So the easiest way is to go to the MSF console, and what we're going to do is look for payloads and have it write out the payload. You could also do a one-liner, which would be MSF Venom, and do it that way. So what we're looking for is search, and then we're going to do type :payload, and then we want ASP. And so now that's going to specify just payloads, and it should have done just ASP, but it did not. So we see there's Node.js, Java, Linux. Windows. All right. So they don't have a specific ASP. What we're gonna have to do is specify that to be the file name. So we know this is Windows. We had the banner version, right? And so what we want to use then is going to be payload Windows, and then we'll want a reverse shell basically. Or we could even do interpreter. Either way, whatever one you wanted to do, that's gonna be fine. So if we wanted, let's see here. That's a PowerShell bind. We could do, let's see. We'll do platform Windows. This is just going to narrow this down even more. So we got a shell reverse TCP, so 247. I always like to get interpreter if I can get it, so let's do this one here, 22. So use 222. Okay. So if we show options, this just has a basic options here. And what we want to do is then set lhost. That can be ton 0. So that's pulling my IP address basically. And then we need to show advanced. There's a way to set the file type. All right, so we got the auto load, unhook, prepend, workspace verbose. Oh, I think it's generate. There it is. Yep, okay. So once you have your option set, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do generate, and then we're going to specify the file, type, and the output. So generate, this time we're going to specify, here's your output format. So yeah, we could do base 32, 64, bash, C, C sharp. What you're probably guessing that we're going to do is ASP or ASPX, right? So we'll try ASP, and then we're going to specify the output format, and we want that to be exactly where we want that on our system. All right, we'll try it here and see if that's going to work. So we're doing a dot slash, and we'll just call this met rev 444 ASP. I need another 4. There we go. Okay, so that should have wrote that out to that file. We can split this, and we do see it there. We'll also go ahead and do ASPX, just in case. ASPX, ASPX. Okay. So now we have both of the the files there. What we need to do then is set up the listener. So this is going to be our payload when we set up our listener. We have the port that we define, 444. But in order to start up a listener, you'll need to use exploit multi-handler. Okay, and then now you're going to set the payload and specify the one that you just did there. Okay, so now we have our options, set lhost. On this one here, you're going to set the lhost to be, if you want to listen to all ports, then set it to all zeros. If you want to only listen specifically on like your tunnel port, when you're doing like this type of CTF stuff, or like on your Ethernet interface, the one that's connected to your local network, then that's when you would specify that. But in this case here, we're going to do that. The other thing that I highly suggest is you set exit on session to false. And so what this does is it keeps this job listening so that every time you load up the page, you get another shell. And this can happen sometimes that whenever like your shell dies and you have to refresh the page, it just makes it easier. You don't have to go back into Metasploit and restart your handler. So with that all set up, then what we want to then do is exploit -j. And so now we're listening. We're ready to go. And we can verify this by jobs-v, and we'll see that we have an exploit multi-handler. Here's the payload. Here's the listening IP and port, and we're ready to go. So as soon as a Metasploit payload comes through, we're uploading it and starting the session. Okay. All right. So let's do this. We're gonna upload now. So we do another put, and we're gonna do met rev, and that's gonna be 444 ASP. Okay, and then we're gonna also go ahead and do ASPX just in case. All right, both sessions are uploaded. Again, we have the listener ready to go. So all we need to go now is to that website, just like we did with the passwords decoded. So now we're met rev 4444.asp. We'll start it with ASP. Okay, looks like an error occurred, so we can try the ASPX. All right, interpreter session 1 open. So ASPX was one, but ASPX allowed us to have access to the system. All right, so now if we do sessions, we now have 2 apparently, and so we can interact with the first one. So now we're in interpreter, and with interpreter comes a lot of possibilities and a lot of extra add-ons. So we could do system info. Now we know exactly that we are Windows 2016, x64, so that's good. Our interpreter is x64, so they match. That's perfect, exactly what we want. If we do question mark, then here's all the different core commands that we can do. Next thing we would probably want to do is check our privileges and permissions. So we can do let's get privs and get pid. Just basically do all the gets here. Get env, pid, privs, sid, uid. That'll tell us where we're at. So none set. There's our PID. There's our privs. All right, so something to kind of highlight here. The SE impersonate privilege is available to us, which means that we can impersonate other tokens and stuff like that. And we'll try to do that in Metasploit, and then if not, then we'll try a different way. We'll get SID and UID. Oops. Okay, so now we have an idea who we are and our privileges. Again, you could have also just done that. Doesn't work on this one. We need a command line to do that. All right. Tokens, right? So let's see here. Can load. Done. Got priv. Can we load also incognito? And let's load Kiwi. So now if we do question mark, you'll see some additional commands. So what we're doing is loading these DLLs into that space. So when you type load, you're telling interpreter, hey, I have this DLL that I need you to take from me and load into your memory space, and then basically give me more commands on here. So this basically adds this functionality via that doing the DLLs. So we have a couple options, and the best one, going top down. So again, this is the standard API is the stuff that we already had before. Privs that I was trying to load, this is ones that was already loaded. So we could try to do get system hash dump. Hash dump's not going to work if we don't have admin. And then there's the incognito commands, and then kiwi commands. And we just lost interpreter. So that died. So we'll have to load the page again, and we should get the shell. So what we want to do is kind of migrate out of this process as soon as possible. Oh, timed out. Did the server die? Okay, still good there. Still listening. See if the server's still responding. Doesn't seem like it. Yep, looks like the server completely died. All right, I'll be right back after I get the server restarted. All right, we reestablished the shell here. Just had to restart the box and get redo the same thing that we did there. Let's go ahead and do PS, and what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and see if we can migrate to a different process. We don't want to lose this again or have an issue. So we're going to try to migrate to a different process here. This light agent maybe potentially. We need a PID, so that's going to be 2008. So migrate 2008. See if that lets us do that. Insignificant privileges. Awesome. Um, let's do -C and C. Nope. Might not be able to move over to 1 because we just don't have the privileges to. Yep, that's what it's gonna look like. We're all right. That's fine. Let's just load what we were gonna do. So looking at incognito, we can list out tokens. We can do it by username. So then we have the ability to kind of just see what's available to us. We could impersonate. What else could we do here? So we're not really getting any additional things there. We did have, the privileges before where I said, load privs, and we have get system, so we could try that. All of them fail. All right, so we're not getting anything more than what we had. What we need to kind of do is get access via something else. So we're going back to that privileges, right? And let's see if we have a privilege exploit or anything like that that we could use. Type post platform. It's going to be Windows. Actually, it's going to be an exploit still. So there's a local MS16075 reflection. Whoops. Okay, there's that. We want to set lhost to be set session to 3. Because it didn't take that, let's just double check, make sure it, yeah, it's not putting it like it's supposed to. So we'll want to specify our IP address. Okay. That should be good. Let's change the L port. That way we just have something on a different L port. And exploit. Okay, completed but no session. So we did not get anything more from that. So we're kind of stuck in this position of we know what we can do to elevate the privileges, but we need to get to that location. So let's do our standard processes again. You know, we played a little bit. Let's go back to our methodology, things that we know that works. So what we want to do is upload WinPs, execute it, and see what the results are. Right. All right. So we can do that from here. We just need to get the location. So we have sessions. Let's go with WinPZXE. And bin. Let's see here. We want binaries. Release. All right, WinP's any. All right, so print working directory. And that's going to be what we upload. Okay, So we need to go back into our session, interact with that. We're in interpreter now, so we can upload. All right, it's access denying us because we're in the sys32 directory inetserv. So we'll go out of that. We'll go into temp. We are not in temp, so it's going to be big. So we want to get into a directory where we can upload something. With our current privileges. There it is. So it's in C Windows temp. And then we should be able to upload here. Okay. So if we look, there's when P's any. All right. The best bet's probably to do shell. This will drop us down to the command shell. We'll run when P's any.exe. We'll want to pipe that into output.text. And hopefully capture all that output there. So this might take a little bit. We could have done PowerShell and then done a T object also, and then that way we kind of could see the output as it's writing it. It's only different, big difference between shell and PowerShell. So we're just waiting for that to finish. So another place I like to look sometimes is hack tricks XYZ, if I remember right. If not, then we'll have to Google it. Book.hattricks XYZ. So this has a lot of different little, you know, I don't, I don't know what to say exactly. Just things to remember, or things that you could definitely use. What we wanted to look at or look for is that SE impersonate. So here's a checklist. It looks like this is usually a good thing to kind of do. Oh, this is what when Peas does. Well, here's a Windows local privilege escalation. Ah, my interpreter died. Yes, I guess. Oh, web server, don't tell me that you completely failed out on me again. If so, then what we'll have to do is just spawn a reverse shell and go that route. So here's all different things talking about privileges and how to kind of work through those. Network shares, credentials. Again, we want to go from, we don't have high integrity, but this one says high integrity. So high integrity means that it's basically, like almost like an admin, but not a complete admin. What are we looking at? Impersonate user. So that's the code, and then it's going to try to impersonate the user. So the one I'm really looking for, and I was trying to kind of point to this, is going to be a print spoofer. And that's what I was kind of hoping that this would eventually lead to, but it's not. There we go. All right. Let's see here. So this is abusing the print spoofer, the privilege, the SE privilege. Spawns a system privilege, and you can access it. So what we need to do is get the. So again, this is compiled code. You have no idea what this is doing exactly. Run at your own risk. You should really kind of make sure you know what this is. Yeah, it's compiled from the source, but that's not, you should compile it, that type of thing. We're going to make a dir payload. We're going to move that downloads into payloads. Okay. Hopefully we still have a shell, and then we can just upload it and move on. Yep, sessions I4. That output, so that process is still not running. We could get that, so we could, so we're going to download the output.txt, and then we're going to upload this shell. Done. And print spoofer 64.exe. All right, so now we're dropping down to a shell. We should be in the temp directory with our ls is not a command. There's print spoofer. So we run it. Need to specify command to execute. We could do an H just to see. There we go. All right, and so we want to execute an interactive terminal. We're going to do C, and then we're going to do CMD. So this will give us a command prompt terminal. And now we are NT authority system. So now we're root, basically. So now if we were to execute, anything would be executed as root. And so in this case here, what we'd want to do is maybe execute a shell back to us as this. So we could go into that inet. We could do, let's see. We could upload like another interpreter exe or whatever, and then have that spawn back to us, and that that would give us access via this NT system. Or we could use the commands, the terminal as we have cfit right now. Again, we're NT authority. So for the box, for that, what we would need to do is we need to look for the flags, right? So we would go into see users. We have Bob, public and administrator. So we could do, Bob's probably going to be the user. Sorry, I keep doing tab, hoping that tab complete is there, and it's not because it's not a full terminal. So, on Windows you can't do cat. That's a common mistake. So what do I use besides cat? You can do type. Type is an old command that will basically type out the contents of the file on the terminal there. So there's the user flag. Okay. And then for the administrator, there's the flag. So we met all the objectives. Again, the main portion of this room was to kind of write up the report. So, the things that you would definitely need to kind of write up is that SE privilege. Also, that the web application server has excessive privileges that it does not need. And that's one of them. And you see why. So once we were able to start executing a binary, we can use that SE privilege to use a name pipe to gain access to that to NT system. So, and that's what this is underlining doing. If you were to look at the code and see what we're actually doing in here is we're using the local networks or systems and services to listen, and then using that SE impersonate to take on that. Um, so that just escalates those privileges up, and that's pretty dangerous, of course. Based on this too, we could have done this by SMB exec. Yeah, if you can execute commands but don't have an interactive shell, you can create a new system process and exit immediately without interacting with it. So if there was netcat on there, we could have done that. All right. So that's the box. I hope you learned something, and catch you on the next one. Bye.